Hi there, I'm Danni and I'm the host of the podcast What Are You Going to Do With That? And in this series of short videos on our YouTube channel, we try to bring you some tips and advice on recurrent topics that we've heard from our guests on the podcast. So if you're interested in these topics, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and also connect with us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook with the same handle, What to Do With That. In today's video, I'd like to talk with you about imposter syndrome. Now, what is imposter syndrome? It's when you have this feeling that you're in a certain place simply because of luck or because even an error in the system, and not because you're actually qualified or experienced enough to be in that position. So you constantly have this feeling that you don't really know what you're doing and that you really just bluff or guess your way through certain situations. And you have this constant fear of someone calling you out on it and calling you an imposter. Despite its name, imposter syndrome, it's not actually a disease or an abnormality. It's not even necessarily tied to a depression, anxiety, or low self-esteem. It actually occurs among a range of gender, age, a range of occupations and race. It does actually occur more often among members of groups that are underrepresented or disadvantaged. So, how does imposter syndrome work? Well, people with incredible skills, and this includes Einstein, often believe that others are just as skilled as they are, and that leads them to believe that they're not necessarily deserving of any other credit or opportunities than others. Now, here's a secret. Actually, privately, everyone struggles with feelings of self-doubt. And everyone thinks that they are the only ones who have these feelings or have to go through that themselves because no one is talking about it. Serious feelings of imposterism can prevent a person from sharing their great ideas or from applying to jobs and certain programs. So you'd eventually really be just giving up and then telling yourself that it's actually not that important. And that's a shame. So, how do we all deal with imposter syndrome? Well, the number one thing to do is talk about it. I know this could be scary because on the one hand, when you talk about your ideas, you're afraid that it might actually be confirmed that that's a stupid idea, which is probably not. And on the other hand, if someone does think it's a good idea and give you positive feedback on it, you might not be actually convinced that this person isn't lying to you and that you're not a fraud. But it's still worth to express your ideas. That could be done either with mentors or supervisors, and this could be very helpful because they often experience the same thing themselves, and they can explain in a way that they would have liked to hear themselves before how to get past that. It's also important to talk or discuss these feelings of self-doubt with peers, and you might find out that actually a lot of other people go through the same emotions as you are. And just this idea that you're not alone in it and that there's a word and a term for what you're experiencing could be a great relief. And here's another thing. Realize that you might feel stupid. That happens to everyone from time to time. But also realize that this is a feeling and not actually a fact. You're not actually stupid. Also, recognize a situation that you could get into that would trigger your imposter syndrome. If you're the only person in the room of color, or the first woman in it, or maybe the oldest or the youngest one in there, it's a very normal response to experience self-doubt because you're on the receiving end of social stereotypes on competence and intelligence. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. We don't know everything, and sometimes there's a different angle or simply a different idea that you didn't even think about yet. And that's okay, it's not a shame. Sometimes you should really realize that you have the right to be wrong just as much as the person next to you, and that you can have an off day or ask for advice and help. In the end, making mistakes is what has us learn. You should know that no one goes from 0 to hero overnight. And the same goes for academics. You don't go from being a newbie in this one stage to the stage of being an expert. It's not either or. You could look at it as more of a spectrum. And the goal is for you to really improve yourself along the way to really becoming that expert. And once you're that expert, you still learn. It's a continuous process. That road of improving can be a bumpy one, and you will most likely make a few mistakes along the way. That's alright. Just trying to create a way of responding to those mistakes in a healthy way. In the end, we'll learn and become better after making a mistake. Do reward yourself for putting in the work and the effort to do better next time and to not make that mistake again. Celebrate that now you are more experienced and qualified. The last thing I wanted to mention is that fake it till you make it still stands. Don't wait till you're confident enough to try something new and take a risk. Confidence is something that you also build. So take that risk, go for it, and please do not let the imposter syndrome or any feelings of self-doubt stop you from what it is you want to do. I'm curious about your experiences with imposter syndrome. Do you have any other tips and advice to give? Please write it in the comments below. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to both our podcast and the YouTube channel to see more tips and advice. Also connect with us on social media to start a discussion. See you next time.